Campfire Classics is a classic literature podcast. However, your hosts will occasionally use not-so-classy language and immature humor to describe very mature situations. As such, listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Ken Sandberg.
And I'm Heather Michelle Lawler.
Welcome to Campfire Classics, where we try to read those books that look really good on your shelf.
I'll be there for you when the rain starts to fall. I'll be there for you. I ate Jennifer Aniston salad.
Whoa! That is not the euphemism I was ready to start today's episode with, but do tell.
But I did. I ate it, and it was delicious and juicy and
I've heard that about
very
her
healthy. Her salad. Yeah, the internet. So hi, everybody. Welcome to Campfire Classics, where Heather makes up weird songs at the beginning of the show that tend to lead us into something. And
except that this time, she didn't make it up. The Rembrandts did.
Well, I don't know if I was really, was it close enough?
It was exactly the song through
good.
Several lines.
Oh, good. Anyway, so the internet has been kind of blowing up recently about Jennifer Aniston's salad, the one she used to eat on the set of Friends all the time. And Ken and I have been eating very healthily and whatnot. And I just went on a grocery trip and was like, I want to try Jennifer Aniston's salad. So I came home, I bought all the stuff, minus the pistachios, and I made it, and it was delish. And I just finished eating it, which is why that was the first thing on my mind.
There is no way to say the phrase Jennifer Aniston salad without it sounding dirty.
That's why I like it so much.
I don't know why.
A little fresh squeeze of lemon juice, and it's like,
it doesn't make it
yummy.
that doesn't.
It makes it better.
And it's
But I highly recommend it. It was delicious. I cut the oil down and did not do the pistachios. I added tomatoes instead. But it was really delish. It was yummy. So that's what I'm up to. What are you up to, Ken?
What am I up to? I am drinking a little bit of Maker's Mark.
Yes.
I have been playing a lot of piano, and as a result, my forearms are very tired. Because
wiggling your fingers.
Because wiggling my fingers.
And that also is kind of, we're having a lot of fun here
and that's
in Philly.
What I've been doing.
Yeah.
I've been enjoying the Doctor Who rewatch we're in the midst of. Yeah,
I decided, because now it's all on HBO, and I never got to see the Peter Capaldi generation, and then I only saw the first 5 episodes of Jodie Whittaker. So I was like, well, before they start the new one, I should,
go ahead and
catch up.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to start from the beginning again because I've only seen it once. And so I've been watching a few on my own, but most of the time I enjoy watching it with Ken because he knows so much about Doctor Who, and he's the true fan that got me involved, even though my dad always loved it too.
I'm that annoying fan who we get to a really cool part of the episode and I'm like, hang on, pause it. Did you know?
Yeah. But I like that stuff. That's why I like this podcast. Because I like when things lead to other things, because that's how my brain works. It's usually going 100 miles a minute. So I don't mind multiple information going in at the same time.
If we'd thought about it, we could have set up microphones and done a podcast during the Doctor Who rewatch.
What, like a recap podcast?
Like a fan cast.
A fan cast.
Yeah.
No, I think with that one you have to do a video because, so one of my favorite TikTok accounts that I've been watching is this brother and sister, and it's usually the brother. I think he only has the sister on when she's over watching it. He's watching Game of Thrones for the first time.
Yeah.
Currently, as in now, and does not know anything about it. Other than a few things, but has somehow gone spoiler free because when it first came out was not interested at all. And a friend convinced them to watch it. And he does this with other movies, other things too. But the Game of Thrones one is my favorite because you watch this person watch the Red Wedding for the first time, or like, I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to spoil anything, even though
Sure.
it's been out for a long time. But like, you watch people watch certain episodes, and it's just hilarious because their faces. It's their faces that are funny because it's like, and I know for a fact I make hilarious, stupid faces when we're watching shows. So,
Hey, campers. What TV series would you be interested in watching along with us? How about a Saved by the Bell rewatch
oh God,
podcast?
no! Please don't do that to me. Oh no! I mean, there already is. Is it a podcast? That's Zach Morris's trash. Or
I don't think that technically qualifies as a podcast. But I don't know. I don't know what counts.
It's like a YouTube.
It's a
YouTube series. But like, yeah. I would do that, but I would have to have video. I think you gotta have the simulcast of like what's going on the screen and the visual.
Yeah.
Because the visual is half the funny. Like
The visual is half the funny, which is why this podcast is
not.
only half funny.
It's only half funny. The other half is literature.
Welcome to Campfire Classics, a literary, sometimes funny podcast where we take stories out of the public domain and read them to you, sight unseen. That's right, we cold read these stories for you and make fun of penis jokes along the way.
We make fun of penis jokes, or do we make up penis jokes? Both?
A little bit of both,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Euphemisms abound.
Yeah. Campfire Classics, where euphemisms abound. And that's what we do. But before we get to this week's story, which I have chosen for Heather, and I think it likely to be a doozy, I wanted to get through this little segment first, this week's episode of Clown Corner.
I've seen a lot of clowns on things recently.
Yeah.
I mean, Ken and I have been like traveling or like walking around the city and stuff. You see like random clown graffiti or clown paintings and stuff, and I'm like, look what you've done to me.
Well, if you're new to the podcast, and if we're doing our job right, every episode would be somebody's first episode. Or if you just haven't tuned in a while and you decided to pick back up now, Clown Corner is a segment that I started a few months back where I talk about clowns. And since no one has told me to stop, I still do it. So this week...
I also wasn't here when we started this, by the way.
That's why I said I started it a couple of months back. It's all my fault. So this week, Clown Corner is brought to you by lawsuits, because legal action is always funny.
Wait, what?
So in the last time I hosted Clown Corner, I talked about Ronald McDonald.
Yes.
And this week, I'm going to stay kind of in that world. As I mentioned...
3 weeks in a row, we have mentioned Ronald McDonald on Spotlight. If McDonald's doesn't sponsor us, then
the world is okay. We don't really need McDonald's as a sponsor.
I mean, I'll take their money.
So as I mentioned, McDonald Land is the world in which Ronald and his friends and enemies, yes, Ronald McDonald has enemies, all live.
Yeah, the grumpy guy in black and stripes.
Yeah, that's what they call him, the grumpy guy in black and stripes.
I can't remember his name. The burglar? McBurglar?
The Hamburglar.
Hamburglar,
Yeah.
There it is.
So anyway, named after the original founders of the company, Richard and Maurice McDonald, McDonald Land is... they started the burger joint in 1940. It wasn't until the early 60s when Ray Kroc bought it and turned it into what we know today. But you can watch the movie starring Batman if you want to learn more about that.
Starring Batman. He's going to be back, too.
I know.
If you watch the Super Bowl, you know what commercial we're talking about.
Weirdly stoked about that. So early commercials for McDonald's featured Ronald foiling the plots of the Hamburglar, Evil Grimace, and other characters who were attempting to steal food, and he was commended for his efforts by the likes of Officer Big Mac, who you could crawl around inside of like a cage in the McDonald's play place.
I remember.
Yeah. And Mayor McCheese, who last time you said you don't remember.
I don't know. I remember Mr. Big Mac, but I don't remember the other one.
I'm going to continue what I had researched and planned to say, but as I was scrolling through Facebook earlier this afternoon, after I'd already done all this research, I ran across a thing that was it was a meme, and in the center of it, it was the Confederate flag. And it was, here are a few things that lasted longer than the Confederacy. And it was a bunch of, whatever, silly thing. Filming for Lord of the Rings. It took longer to film the Lord of the Rings movies than the Confederacy lasted. But also, Mayor McCheese was the mascot of McDonald's for longer than the Confederacy existed.
I love that came up on Facebook.
Yep.
Like, what?
So anyway,
fuck the Confederacy.
So I didn't realize how deep a cut Mayor McCheese really was until you didn't recognize him a couple of weeks ago, and then I saw that thing. But now I understand why he really was only a major player for a relatively short period of time.
Oh.
See, in 1973, Sid and Marty Krofft sued McDonald's, claiming that the entire McDonaldland premise plagiarized their television show, the most fucked up television show in history, HR Puffin Stuff.
Oh, shit. I've watched that high before.
I think that is the only way anyone has watched it since 1976.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking like 20 years ago. I feel like we found... Was YouTube around? Yeah, I mean, it had to be. I feel like I was like 25. So yeah, like YouTube had just become a big thing. And I'm pretty sure I watched an episode or two of that really fucking high.
Yeah.
And yes, super weird.
For our listeners not familiar with HR Puffin Stuff, it was a children's puppet show, kind of in the vein of like... What? Some twisted place between Barney and the Muppets or something?
Barney and the Muppets and like Fraggle Rock. And,
yeah.
But it was like very hippy dippy.
Oh, it's really creepy. Just like, look for it. HR Puffin Stuff. It's
everyone. That's drugs.
It's pretty wild. It's H.R. Puffin Stuff. Puffnstuff.
I mean, they're literally telling you to get high. Puffin Stuff. Like, come on.
So, in particular, the Crofts claimed that Mayor McCheese was a direct ripoff of their title character, H.R. Puffin Stuff, who was the mayor, and apparently the original version of Mayor McCheese looked way too similar to HR Puffin Stuff. There were a bunch of other things that were going on.
Funny.
Anyway, it was a hotly contested suit, but in the end, McDonald's was ordered to pay HR Puffin Stuff's creators $50,000.
Oh my God.
McDonald's thought that was unfair and appealed the case. They took it up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. In the appeal, the ruling, they agreed $50,000 was not fair. McDonald's owed the creepy puppet show $1 million and was ordered to discontinue or significantly redesign nearly half of their commercial characters and stop running all commercials until that happened.
Oh, shit. Wow. See, McDonald's now, if they got sued for something for $50,000, you would never even know about it.
Like, no, they just... pay it off.
It would just be like, whatever, sure, whatever. Like, I love that it was so early in them. They're like, no. And like, maybe they didn't. Like, on it, like, there are times that people are like, that had to be like stolen. And the person's like, I swear I never even heard that or saw that. And
well, no one could claim that they had never heard of it because the actor who played HR Puffin Stuff played Grimace in those original commercials.
Oh, shit. Well, then that's some sketchy ass shit.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, right around this time, there were a few major...
Also, Grimace is one of the least scary, villains ever. He looks like a purple Teletubby.
So I was actually just about to talk about
like
that.
Like an overweight Teletubby.
Because right around this time, there were a few major redesigns, including... Evil Grimace, the four-armed purple monster who stole kids' milkshakes and Cokes, who became Grimace. He lost two of his arms, and he just became that weird purple triangle thing.
He looks like Tinky Winky, like went off his diet for the winter.
Yep.
Like it's like Tinky Winky in hibernation, and like good for him.
Yeah. By the early 1980s, after a few attempts to change the character, Mayor McCheese was dropped along with Captain Crook, the Professor, and Officer Big Mac.
Officer Big Mac's not around anymore?
Nope. His image can still be seen in the play place.
Yeah.
But he is no longer officially a resident of McDonaldland. Some other just interesting things about McDonaldland. Frank Welker.
Things I never thought I'd be talking about.
Frank Welker, famously the voice of Scooby-Doo, among many, many others, voiced McDonaldland's extraterrestrial visitor from the 1980s, Cosmic, as well as some of the Nugget Buddies.
The Nugget Buddies? That sounds like what you do after you've eaten too much McDonald's and you have to go to the bathroom.
I gotta go drop some Nugget Buddies. Vern Troyer.
What?
Played Sunday, Ronald's pet dog.
Oh, God. Jesus Christ.
And watch out in the coming weeks for Uncle O'Grimacy, Grimace's uncle, who just loves those Shamrock Shakes.
Oh, my God. All right. Weird.
Anyway, that is this week's Clown Corner.
Some of the stuff we talk on this podcast, I'm like, I would have never, if you'd asked me, like, what's a topic you'll probably never have a deep conversation about? McDonaldland is probably one of the ones I would have said. Yeah. And we've had two.
Once the ball starts rolling, you just got to let it keep going.
Synchronicities. It's life. I feel like synchronicities or deja vu is a different thing, but similar. When coincidence happens, I feel like you're on the right path when things keep lining up like that. So
good.
All right.
So we're on the right path.
All right.
With this podcast, we've got 3 episodes in a row about McDonald's.
My parents did have to eat a McDonald's for the first time in years last night because the town they were staying in on their cross-country journey, the only restaurant open was McDonald's. And my mom's like, they don't even have salads anymore.
It's okay. You know that the salad has more calories than the cheeseburger, right?
Just get the cheeseburger and get a Happy Meal.
Get a Happy Meal.
Get a Happy Meal.
Actually, so the thing I discovered, because there was a while when I was road tripping a lot, and sometimes when you're road tripping and you're starving, McDonald's is just the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what I discovered while on the road is that if you order, even if you don't think you're going to be able to eat the whole thing, everything McDonald's is cheap enough, it's fine. If you order their double quarter pounder with cheese, they don't keep any of those on stock, so they make it fresh.
Yeah.
So you get the double quarter pounder with cheese, and as much as anything that you can order at McDonald's is fresh, hot pipe. The cheese is all melty. The burger, it's pretty good.
That's the one to go. All right.
Order the double quarter pounder with cheese.
Yeah. One of my road trip snacks is the fries. That's when I treat myself to the crack fries that are McDonald's fries. Anyway, McDonald's does not sponsor this podcast, so we're going to move on.
Moving on to what we're actually supposed to do. As I said,
now all I want is French fries.
As I said, every week we read a short story that we pull from public domain and make fun of all of the weird shit that happens in it. And I've chosen a story for Heather to read this week. But before we get into the story, I wanted to give just a little bit of background about this week's author, who, near as I can tell, we have never read before. Ellis Parker Butler was born in Muscatine, Iowa in December 1869.
Well, howdy, you fellow Iowan.
As a relatively young man, he bounced out of Iowa and moved to NYC.
Gee, I wonder why.
Well, Queens, but, New York.
That's New York City. He was an artist. He can't afford to live in Manhattan even back then. I get it.
He helped found the Authors League of America, which is now called the Authors Guild, and the Dutch Treat Club, a similar organization for illustrators.
All right.
His connections to contemporaries like Mark Twain, F. Scott Fitzgerald, and Edgar Rice Burroughs helped him publish more than 30 books and 2,000 stories and essays, which were published in over 225 different magazines.
You know what? The fact that he lived in Queens and not Manhattan and was that successful just shows how fucked up Manhattan prices are.
We're actually going to get to that in a minute here.
Oh, great. Cool.
He was a successful author for over 40 years, writing poetry, short stories, novels, and nonfiction articles. His most famous character was a man named Philo Gubb. He became so popular in serialized stories in magazines that much like Doyle to Sherlock or LeBlanc to Arsène Lupin and so many other authors who have developed a signature meal ticket character, Butler tried to kill Gubb, but the public outcry prevented it.
I love it.
His most popular story, called Pigs is Pigs, was one that I very nearly assigned for you today, but I picked a different one at the last minute.
Well,
so
Pigs is Pigs.
Pigs
he knows.
is Pigs.
He's from Iowa.
Yep. It sounds very funny, like just the title alone. I'm on board, but yeah. It's a bit of a satire thing, and perhaps if this story goes well, then we have Pigs is Pigs to look forward to in the future.
All right.
And yet, for all of that, the reason he lived in Queens is not because he couldn't afford to live in Manhattan.
Okay.
He never considered himself a real writer at all.
Okay.
In fact, he spent almost his entire life working as a banker, and he considered his local community in Queens, his community outreach, his philanthropy, and his local government activism to be far more important to him than his writing career. So the reason he stayed in Queens had nothing to do with money. It's because that's where his people were.
Do you know where in Queens he was?
Flushing, I believe.
Oh, so kind of far out.
Flushing.
Especially back then.
At least he's buried in the Flushing Cemetery.
Oh, then I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's not far from Yonkers and those areas, which were very popular back then. Because because back then, Flushing, what was the 1800s? Back then, it was like a cute little like area.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't the Flushing we know today that is like kind of like overrun and like lots of, it was cute. It was like I look at like Yonkers and like in Hello Dolly times and I'm like, oh, it's adorable. And then you go to Yonkers and you're like, what the fuck is this strip mall hell?
Yeah.
Like, nothing against anyone from Yonkers. Yeah.
Whereas I hear
Or Flushing
and the only thing I think of is the nanny.
Exactly. Like she
was working in a bridal shop in Flushing, Queens, when her boyfriend kicked her out in one of those crushing scenes.
Yeah, that's where she's from. Like, and like, look at like the whole joke of that show is that she's like low class and like tacky and
That's kind of everything I was able to find on him. He had a, by all accounts, very happy, contented, friendly, worked hard kind of life.
Yeah.
Writing was essentially the
hobby.
third list on the list of things, third on his list of things that were important to him. But 2,000 stories
that he was just very good at.
Yeah.
Like it was basically he had an Etsy page for his writing.
Yeah.
Like he was a banker and he worked in the local government, but like in his free time, he'd get in a hammock and write a story and then sell it to somebody who wanted it.
Yeah. So he was apparently on vacation or something up in Massachusetts in 1937 when he died, and he's now buried in Flushing Cemetery in Queens. Today, you will be reading from 1913, the first story of Philo Gubb, his most popular character, entitled Philo Gubb, the Correspondence School Detective, a.k.a. the Hard-Boiled Egg.
Ooh!
Let's start this fire.
Yeah. Philo Gubb, the Correspondence School Detective, the Hard-Boiled Egg, by Ellis Parker Butler.
Junk, junk.
Walking close along the wall to avoid the creaking floorboards, Philo Gubb, paper hanger and student of the Rising Sun Detective Agency's correspondence. Well, there we go. First sentence.
Rollicking start.
Let's start that all again. Walking close along the wall to avoid the creaking floorboards, Philo Gubb, paper hanger and student of the Rising Sun Detective Agency's correspondence.
You got it right in the title.
It's just a longer sentence than I want it to be.
Yeah.
All right.
And there's still more of it after you get through that word.
One more. Here we go.
Just before we get to it, I actually looked up because I saw that he was a paper hanger. It was in his character description. Paper hanger is one of two things. Either it means he is someone who professionally hangs wallpaper.
Okay.
Or it means he's a person who professionally writes fraudulent checks.
I guess we're going to find out.
I'm guessing that he's a
Yes.
wallpaper hanger.
Yes, I would agree. Or he'd be I guess he'd be a detective like the way Frank Abagnale Jr. is.
Yeah.
Like he was a fraudulent check person and then became part of the FBI.
Yeah, but I'm thinking he's like a house painter except for the inside.
Extra money.
Yeah.
Walking close along the wall to avoid the creaking floorboards, Philo Gubb, paper hanger and student of the Rising Sun Detective Agency's Correspondence School of Detecting, tiptoed to the door of the bedroom he shared with the mysterious Mr. Critz. In appearance, Mr. Gubb was tall and gaunt, reminding one of a modern Don Quixote or a human flamingo.
I always think of those two in one thought.
So he's played by Tommy Tune.
Yeah. In the musical version
in
of the Philo
Gubb
Gubb
Detective Agency. Yes, it's Tommy Tune, and there's a lot of tap dancing.
I'm on board already.
By nature, Mr. Gubb was the gentlest and most simple-minded of men. Now, bending his long, angular body almost double, he placed his eye to a crack in the door panel and stared into the room. Within, just out of the limited area of Mr. Gubb's vision, Roscoe Critz paused in his work and listened carefully. He heard the sharp whistle of Mr. Gubb's breath as it cut against the sharp edge of the crack in the panel, and he knew he was being spied upon. He placed his chubby hands on his knees and smiled at the door with a red flush of triumph spread over his face. Through the crack in the door, Mr. Gubb could see the top of the washstand beside which Mr. Critz was sitting, but he could not see Mr. Critz. As he stared, however, he saw a plump hand appear and pick up, one by one, the articles lying on the washstand. I love that Mr. Critz knows he's there, and I'm assuming knows he's a detective, so now he's just fucking with him. Like, is this like a training exercise? Like,
I don't know. We don't know anything about either of these guys yet,
well, now
really.
we know Mr. Critz, who is his roommate, knows he's being spied on, but he hasn't called him out yet. He's letting him watch.
We also know that Mr. Gubb does not know much about Mr. Critz because he called him the mysterious Mr. Critz.
Even though they're roommates. Well, I'm guessing they're like flatmates.
Yeah.
Like they live in the same, like, you know.
This could also be a temporary housing situation.
Yeah.
It could be that they're living in a hotel room.
Yeah, it's like one of those like boarding houses or something. There were, first, 7 or 8 half shells of English walnuts. Second, a rubber shoe heel out of which a piece had been cut. Third, a small rubber ball no larger than a pea. Fourth, a paper-bound book. And lastly, a large and glittering brick of yellow gold. As the hand withdrew the golden brick, Mr. Gubb pressed his face closer against the door in an effort to see more. And suddenly, the door flew open, and Mr. Gubb sprawled on his hands and knees on the worn carpet of the bedroom. "There now," said Mr. Critz. "There now, serves you right. Hope you hurt yourself." I wonder how long he's going to, string this guy along.
About that long, apparently.
About that long. Mr. Gubb arose slowly, like a giraffe, and brushed his knees. "Why?" he asked. "Snooping and sneaking like that," said Mr. Critz crossly. "Scaring me to fits a'most." Oh, is he? I think he's a pirate. He talks in a dialect.
I like that. Yeah, he's written in dialect.
Yeah, he's written in dialect, so we're going in. All right. "Scaring me to fits a'most. How'd I know who 'twas? If you come in, why don't you just come in instead of snooping and sneaking and falling in that way?" As he talked, Mr. Critz replaced the shells and the rubber heel and the rubber pea and the gold brick on the washstand. He was a plump little man with a shiny bald head and a white goatee. As he talked, he bent his head down so he might look above the glasses of his spectacles. And in spite of his pretended anger, he looked like nothing so much as a kindly, benevolent old gentleman.
Santa Claus.
The sort of old gentleman that keeps a small store in a small village and sells writing paper that smells of soap and candy sticks out of a glass jar with a glass cover.
Super Santa.
Yeah, he's Santa Claus. He's Santa Claus with a stationery store. That's a lot of S's. How'd I know but what you was a detective? He asked in a gentler tone. Does he speak English well?
So there was, while I was doing research, a quote of sorts about Philo Gubb.
Okay.
Mr. Butler said that Philo Gubb is a small-town paper hanger who learned his deductive technique by correspondence courses, which we've already learned, and commits a major crime during every case on which he works. The murder of the English language.
Oh, cool. That's hilarious.
So apparently we've got probably a couple characters who do some interesting things with English, so just be prepared for that.
How'd I know but what you was a detective? He said in a gentler tone. I am, said Mr. Gubb soberly, seating himself on one of the two beds. I'm putty near a detective, as you might say. So pretty near a detective?
And if you look at how many syllables his pronunciation of detective has.
Yes.
I'm pretty near a detective.
Is Mr. Gubb 12? Or 6?
Detective.
I'm pretty near a detective, as you might say. Dang it all, said Mr. Critz. Now I got to go and hunt another room. I can't room with no detective. Well, now, Mr. Critz, said Mr. Gubb, I don't want you to feel that way. Knowing you are a detective makes me all nervous, complained Mr. Critz.
Fair enough. I don't like spending time in a room with a cop.
No matter who you are and how little or as much as you've broken the law in your life, walking by cop cars always makes me, a
little jumpy.
I feel guilty no matter what.
Yep.
And maybe that's the Catholic in me, or what, but I wonder if all people feel that way when they go by cops, because I always feel like I did something wrong, or I'm going to accidentally when they're right there. All right, so Mr. Critz wants a new room. It makes me nervous, complained Mr. Critz, and a man in my business has to have a steady hand, don't he? You ain't told me what your business is, said Mr. Gubb. You needn't pretend you don't know, said Mr. Critz. Any detective that saw that stuff on the washboard would know. Well, of course, said Mr. Gubb. I ain't a full detective yet. You can't look for me to guess things as quick as a full detective would. Of course, that brick sort of looks like a gold brick. It is a gold brick, said Mr. Critz. Yes, said Mr. Gubb. But I don't mean no offense, Mr. Critz. From the way you look, I sort of thought, that it was a gold brick you bought. Mr. Critz turned very red. Well, what if I did buy it, he said. That ain't any reason I can't sell it, is it? Just because a man buys eggs once or twice ain't any reason he shouldn't go into the business of egg selling, is it? Just because I've bought 1 or 2 gold bricks in my day ain't any reason I shouldn't go selling them, is it? That's some solid logic, Mr. Critz.
It's reasonable, yeah.
Mr. Gubb stared at Mr. Critz with unconcealed surprise. You ain't a con man, are you, Mr. Critz? He asked. I love that this kid is like Dennis the Menace in my brain.
He's not a kid. He's got a job.
June. It's an adult man.
It's a full-ass adult man.
It's a full-ass adult man with the voice and attitude of like Dennis the Menace. Mr. Wilson.
Which then makes Mr. Critz Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah. Or he's Mr. Wilson. He's
Walter Matthau.
He's Walter Matthau, like in the movie. If you haven't seen the Dennis the Menace movie from the 90s,
we've talked about it 9 times on this podcast.
It holds up. I have watched it recently. Leah Thompson from Back to the Future's in it. Like, it's a fucking great cast. And, like, damn, it holds up. Anyway. If I ain't yet, there's no sign I ain't gonna be, said Mr. Critz firmly. One man has as good a right to try his hand at it as another, especially when a man has had my experience in it. Mr. Gubb, there ain't hardly a con game I ain't been conned with. I've been confidenced long enough. From now on, I'm gonna to confidence other folks. That's what I'm gonna do, and I won't be bothered by no detective living in the same room as me. Detectives and con men don't mix no ways. No, sir.
Also fair.
I love it. He just, like, straight up came out. He's like, yeah, people con me a lot, so fuck it. I'm going to be a con man, too.
Yeah. Well, this is... If you bully the same kid long enough, he's going to start fighting back.
Well, they're going to eventually bully someone else or bite you.
Yeah.
Not bite you. Fight you. They might
Maybe
bite you.
bite.
I don't know. I don't know what they're into.
I don't know. I got bullied a lot as a kid, and I wasn't above biting.
Just gnashing some teeth.
Motherfucker, take another swing at me. I dare you.
Oh my God, he won't let go of my ankle. Well, sir, said Mr. Gubb, I can see the sense of that. But you don't need to move right away. I don't aim to start in detecting in earnest for a couple of months yet. I got a couple of jobs of paper hanging and decorating to finish up, and I can't start in sleuthing until I get my star anyway. Yeah, he's like, I'm a novice.
I don't have my PI license yet.
Yeah, I'm just in PI school. And I don't get my star until I get one more lesson and learn it and send in the examination paper and $5 extra for the diploma. Then I'm going at it as a regular business. It's a good business. Every day, there are more crooks. Excuse me, I didn't mean to say that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. No offense.
I didn't want to offend you,
is
sir.
crooks? Is that the PC? Are we good with crooks?
Is that what we're saying?
Criminals?
Is that what we're saying today?
Cons?
Con man? That's all right, said Mr. Critz kindly. Call a spade a spade. If I ain't a crook yet, I hope to be soon. I didn't know how you'd feel about it, explained Mr. Gubb. Tactfulness is strongly advised in the lessons of the Rising Sun Detective Agency Correspondence School of Detecting. God damn. Slocum, Ohio? Asked Mr. Critz quickly. You didn't see the ad in the Hearthstone and Farmside, did you? Yes, Slocum, Ohio, said Mr. Gubb, and that is the paper I saw the ad into. Big money in detecting. Be a sleuth. We can make you the equal of Sherlock Holmes in 12 lessons. Why? Well, sir, said Mr. Critz, that's funny. That ad was right atop of the one I saw that I studied quite considerable before I could make up my mind whether 'twould be best for me to become a detective and go out and get square with the fellers that sold me gold bricks and things by putting them in jail, or to even things up by sending for this book that was advertised right under the Rising Sun Correspondence School. How come I settled to do as I done was that I had a sort of stock to start with a first-class gold brick and some green goods I'd bought, and this book only cost $0.25. And she's a Hummer for $0.25. A Hummer.
You get a Hummer for a quarter?
You get a Hummer for a quarter?
Wow.
I mean, it was like the early 1900s.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Quarter was a lot of money.
$0.25 is a lot of money. Yeah.
That was like $20, 25, 30, $40 now.
I don't know.
Look up what a quarter
in 1913?
In 1913 would be. Because
I definitely just tried to Google Hummer. That's not what I meant.
Also, I want to point out the name of the town in Ohio is Slocum.
Better than Quickum.
Slocum 25-cent Hummers.
Does it get quicker if you pay more?
Do you want it to be quicker?
Well, I don't know.
Or do you want it to last? I guess it depends on what you're looking for.
Yeah. Oh, still a bargain.
Oh, yeah?
Still a bargain. Just shy of $8.
Oh, damn. All right. Well, I mean, they are out in Flushing. So these aren't
your highest class Hummers.
These aren't Manhattan Hummers. These are Flushing Queens Hummers.
That said, a quarter from 1913 could be worth up to $850.
If you found one?
Like if you got an actual quarter.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
All right, for like coin collectors and stuff. So Mr. Kritz and Mr. Gubb read the same paper, and one decided to go the cops route, and one decided to go the robbers route.
Yeah.
So they were looking, like, think of the Village Voice, the back page where there's all these like nasty ads, and one of them picked
for
one
$8
and one
Hummers.
Yes. He pulled the paper-covered book from his pocket and handed it to Mr. Gubb. The title of the book was The Complete Con Man by the King of the Grafters. Price 25 cents. That there book, said Mr. Kritz proudly, as if he himself had written it, tells everything a man needs to know to work every con game there is. Once I get it by heart, I won't be afraid to try any of them. Of course, I gotta start small. I can't hope to pull off a wiretapping game right at the start because that has to have a gang. You don't know anybody you could recommend for a gang, do you? Not right offhand, said Mr. Gubb thoughtfully. If you wasn't going in the detective business, said Mr. Kritz, you'd be just the feller for me. You look sort of honest and not as if you was too bright, and that counts a lot. Wow, ouch.
You got a nice, wholesome look about you.
Even in this here simple little shell game, I've got to have a partner. I got to have a partner I can trust. His accent has changed a lot, but, you know,
he's a con man. It's fine.
He stopped writing the story in dialect. So, like, wait, what's going on? Now he's saying partner. Like, now he's like, I'm from the country.
It's fine. He's a con man. His accent changes.
He doesn't know what kind of con man he is yet. He's like, am I a pirate con man? Am I a Western con man?
Still trying to find it. It's good.
Am I
Find your
French?
character.
No, you won't be French. I promise you won't be French, even if you want to be. I gotta have a partner I can trust so I can let him look like he was winning money off me. You see, he explained, moving to the washstand. This shell game is easy enough when you know how. I put 3 shells down like this on a stand, and I put the little rubber P on the stand, and then I take up the 3 shells like this, 2 in one hand and 1 in the other, and I wave around over the P and maybe push the P around a little, and I say, come on, the hand is quicker than the eye, and all of a sudden I put the shells down, and you think the P is under one of them like that. I don't think the P is under one of them, said Mr. Gubb. I seen it roll on the floor. It did roll on the floor that time, said Mr. Kritz apologetically. It most generally does for me yet. I ain't got it down to perfection yet. This is the way it ought to work. Pshaw. There she goes under the floor again. Went under the bed that time. Here she is. Now, the way she ought to work is... there she goes again. You got to practice that game a lot before you try it on the folks in public, Mr. Kritz, said Mr. Gubb seriously. Don't I know that? Said Mr. Kritz rather impatiently. Same as you've got to practice snooping, Mr. Gubb. Maybe you thought I didn't know you was snooping after me wherever I went last night. Did you? Asked Mr. Gubb with surprise plainly written on his face. I seen you every moment from 9 p.m. till 11, said Mr. Kritz. I didn't like it neither. I didn't think to annoy you, apologized Mr. Gubb. I was practicing lesson 4. You wasn't supposed to know I was there at all. Well, I don't like it, said Mr. Kritz. 'Twas all all right last night, but I didn't have nothing important on hand. But if I'd been working up a con game, the fella I was after would have thought it mighty strange to see a man following me everywhere like that. If you went about it quiet and unobstructive, I wouldn't mind, but if I'd had a customer on hand and he'd seen you, it would have made him nervous. He'd think there was a crazy man following us. I was just practicing, apologized Mr. Gubb. It won't be so bad when I get the hang of it. We all got to be beginners sometime. I love that they're both terrible at what they want to be. It's so cute. I guess so, said Mr. Kritz, rearranging the shells in the little rubber pea. Well, I put the pea down like this, and I dare you to bet which shell she's going to be under. And you don't bet, see? So I put the shells down, and you're willing to bet you see me put the first shell over the pea like this. So you keep your eye on that shell, and I move the shells around like this. She's under the same shell, said Mr. Gubb. Well, yes, she is, said Mr. Kritz placidly. But she ought to be. By rights, she ought to sort of ooze out from under whilst I'm moving the shells around, and I'd ought to sort of catch her in between my fingers and hold her there so you don't see her, and then when you say which shell she's under, she ain't under any shell. She's between my fingers, and when you put down your money, I tell you to pick up that shell. No. So when you put down your money, I tell you to pick up that shell, and there ain't anything under it. And before you can pick up the other shells, I pick one up, and I let the pea fall down on the stand like and it'd been under the shell the whole time. That's the game. Only up to now, I ain't got the hang of it. She won't ooze from under, and she won't stick between my fingers, and when she does stick, she won't drop at the right time. Except for that, you've got her all right, have you? Said Mr. Gubb. Except for that, said Mr. Kritz. And I'd have that, only my fingers are stubby. I love that he's like, Mr. Gubb's like, yeah, you got everything. It's fine, except the entire premise of the trick. The whole
except
point.
The execution of it.
Except, doing the trick. You understand what the trick is supposed to be, but you do not have any of the dexterity to do it.
There are a lot of things that I know how they're supposed to work.
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you how a lot of the magic tricks on the ship happened with the magic tricks. I have no fucking clue how they did it.
Yeah. Also, I know how to run a sub 4-minute mile.
Fast?
Yeah, just put your feet down faster.
I know how to lift 500 pounds.
Yeah, just push harder.
Just, be stronger. What was it you thought of having me do if I wasn't detective? That's not it. What was it you thought of having me do if I wasn't a detective? Asked Mr. Gubb. The work you'd have to do would be capping work, said Mr. Kritz. Capper, that's the professional name for it. You'd guess which shell the ball was under. Well, that'd be easy the way you do it now, said Mr. Gubb. I told you I'd got to learn it better, didn't I? Asked Mr. Kritz impatiently. You'd be a capper. You'd guess which shell the pea was under. No matter which you guessed, I'd leave it under that one, so you'd win. And you'd win $10 every time you bet, but not for keeps. That's why I gotta have an honest capper. I can see that, said Mr. Gubb. But what's the use of letting me win if I've got to bring it back? That starts the boobs betting, said Mr. Kritz. I saw the word boobs in the sentence, and I had to pause for a second to be like, what the hell am I about to read?
Boobs. Boobies.
As in, the
easy marks.
The idiots,
yeah.
As opposed to the boobies, the actual boobies. The boobs. We're back in the day when they used the funny words like hot tomatoes and boobs. The boobs see how you look to be winning, and they want to win too, but they don't. When they bet, I win. That ain't a square game, said Mr. Gubb seriously, is it? A crook ain't expected to be square, said Mr. Kritz. It stands to reason if a crook wants to be a crook, he's got to be crooked, ain't he? Yes, of course, said Mr. Gubb. I hadn't looked at it that way. As far as I can see, said Mr. Critz, the more I know how a detective acts, the better off I'll be when I start in doing real business. Ain't that so? I guess till I get the hang of things better, I'll just stay right here. I'm glad to hear you say so, Mr. Critz, said Mr. Gubb with relief. I like you, and I like your looks, and there's no telling who I might get for a roommate next time. I might get someone who wasn't honest. So it was agreed, and Mr. Critz stood over the washstand and manipulated the little rubber pea and the 3 shells, while Mr. Gubb sat on the edge of the bed and studied Lesson 11 of the Rising Sun Detective Agency's Correspondence School of Detecting. When presently Mr. Critz learned to work the little pea neatly, he urged Mr. Gubb to take the part of capper, and each time Mr. Gubb won, he gave him a $5 bill. Then Mr. Gubb posed as a boob. How would you pose as a boob? Just roll up into a ball and put like a little dimple on your head?
Yeah, I suppose it depends. I think I might slowly stick my tongue out.
Is that the nipple?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very tiny nipple compared to the rest of your body.
Or maybe I'm just a really big boob compared to the nipple. Well, and the nipple itself is never terribly big. It's possible that my face is the areola.
How would you, listener, pose as a boob?
It is a little uneven. I feel like that's probably a doctor's visit.
Well, all boobs are uneven.
Right, but if it's that uneven and lumpy, it's probably a doctor's visit.
Probably, unless it's always been like that.
And
then it's just what it is.
Then it's just what it is.
Just is what it is.
You know, those boobs that feel like a sack of potatoes.
Anyway, back to boobs. So then Mr. Gubb posed as a boob, and Mr. Critz won all the money back again, beaming over his spectacle rims and chuckling again and again until he burst into a fit of coughing that made him red in the face and did not cease until he had taken a big drink of water out of the wash pitcher. Never had he seemed more like a kindly old gentleman from behind the candy counter of a small village. He hung over the washstand, manipulating the little rubber pea as if fascinated. Ain't it curious how a feller catches onto a thing like that all at once? He said after a while. If it hadn't been that I was so anxious, I might have fooled with that for weeks and weeks and not gotten anywheres with it. I do wish you could be my capper a while anyway, until I could get one. I need all my time to study, said Mr. Gubb. It ain't easy learning detecting by mail. Yeah, I bet it's not. Pshaw now, said Mr. Critz. I'm real sorry. Maybe if I pay you for your time and trouble $5 a night? How say? Mr. Gubb considered. Well, I don't know, he said slowly. I sort of hate to take money for doing a favor like that. Now, there ain't no need to feel that way, said Mr. Critz. Your time's worth something to me. It's worth a lot to me to get the hang of this gold brick game. Once I get the hang of it, it won't be no trouble for me to sell gold bricks like this one for all the way from $1,000 up. I paid $1,500 for this one myself, and I got it cheap. That's a good profit for this brick. Ain't worth a cent over $100. Wait, so he spent $1,500 on a brick that's actually not worth more than $100?
Well, he said earlier that he's been conned a bunch of times. And that's why he already had the gold brick.
That's why he has it. Yeah, yeah, there it is. Okay, I'm caught up again. This brook ain't worth a cent over $100, and I know, for I took it to the bank after I bought it, and that's what they was willing to pay me for it. So it's easy with a few dollars for me to have help whilst I'm learning. I can easy afford to pay you a few dollars, and to pay a friend of yours the same. Well now, said Mr. Gubb, I don't know but what. I might as well make a little of that way as any other. I got a friend. He stopped short. You don't aim to sell the gold brick to him, do you? Mr. Critz's eyes opened wide behind their spectacles. Lord's sake, no, he said. Well, I got a friend that may be willing to help out, said Mr. Gubb. What'd he have to do? You or him, said Mr. Critz, would be the come on and pretend to buy the brick, and you or him would pretend to help me sell it. Maybe you better have the brick, because you can look stupid, and the feller that's got the brick has got to look that. I can look anyway, a'most, said Mr. Gubb with pride. Do tell, said Mr. Critz. And so it was arranged that the first rehearsal of the gold brick game would take place the next evening. But as Mr. Gubb turned away, Mr. Critz deftly slipped something into the student detective's coat pocket.
Dun, dun.
It was toward noon the next day that Mr. Critz, peering over his spectacles and avoiding as best he could the pails of paste... The pails of paste? Entered the parlor of the vacant house where... the paste...
The paste that he used for putting up the wallpaper.
Putting up wallpaper. There we go. So we now know he is definitely wallpaper hanger.
Well, he said something about, I got a couple more houses to decorate, too, yeah.
But now we definitely know.
Yeah.
Entered the parlor of the vacant house where Mr. Gubb was at work. I just come around, said Mr. Critz rather reluctantly, to say you better not say nothing to your friend. I guess the deal's off. Pshaw now, said Mr. Gubb. You don't mean so. I don't mean nothing in the way of aspersions, you mind, said Mr. Critz with reluctance. But I guess we better call it off. Of course, so far as I know, you are all right. I don't know what you're getting at, said Mr. Gubb. Why don't you say it? That was my belly. That was me digesting Jennifer Aniston's salad.
So she was a slocum.
Well, I've been buncoed so often, said Mr. Critz. Seems like anyone can get money from me anytime and any way, and I got to thinking it over. I don't know anything about you, do I? And here I am, going to give you a gold brick that cost me $1,500 and let you go out and wait until I come for it with your friend. And, well, what's you to stop from just going away with the brick and never coming back? Mr. Gubb looked at Mr. Critz blankly. I've went and told my friend, he said. He's all ready to start in. I hate it to have to say it, said Mr. Critz, but when I come to count over them bills I lent you to cap the shell game with, there was a $5 one short. I know, said Mr. Gubb, turning red. And if you go over there to my coat, you'll find it in my pocket, all ready to hand back to you. I don't know how I come to keep it in my pocket. Must have missed it when I was handing you back the rest. Well, I had a notion it was that way, said Mr. Critz kindly. You look like you was honest, Mr. Gubb, but a $1,000 gold brick that any bank will pay $100 for, I gotta get out of this way of trusting everybody. Mr. Critz was evidently distressed. If 'twas anybody else but you, he said with an effort, I'd make him put up $100 to cover the cost of the brick like that whilst he had it. There, I've said it, and I guess you're mad. I ain't mad, protested Mr. Gubb. Long as you're gonna pay me and Pete, and it's business, I ain't so set against putting up what the brick is worth. Mr. Critz heaved a deep sigh of relief. You don't know how good that makes me feel, he said. I was almost losing what faith in mankind I had left. Mr. Gubb ate his frugal evening meals at the Pie Wagon. Ooh, I want to go to the Pie Wagon.
I like pie.
Pie. It's probably like those old, like, meat pies. And
Yeah,
yummy.
I want shepherd's pie for dinner and then cherry pie afterwards.
Okay.
I just want pie.
We can just have pie food. We don't have any pie crust.
Yes, we do.
Oh, yeah, we do have one. We do have pie.
We have a
nothing
pie
to
crust.
put in the pie.
But we can figure something out.
We could.
What kind of potatoes did you buy?
Sweet potatoes. We could do sweet potatoes and chicken.
Could make sweet potato pie.
Sweet potato pie. It's basically pumpkin pie.
Yeah, except with sweet potatoes.
Yum. Anyway, away from the Pie Wagon. So Mr. Gubb's eating his frugal evening meal at the Pie Wagon on Willow Street, just off Main, where, by day, Pie Wagon Pete dispensed light viands, and Pie Wagon Pete was the friend he had invited to share Mr. Critz's generosity. The seal of secrecy had been put on Pie Wagon Pete's lips before Mr. Gubb offered him the opportunity to accept or decline, and when Mr. Gubb stopped for his evening meal, Pie Wagon Pete, now off duty, was waiting for him. The story of Mr. Kritz and his amateur con business had amused Pie Wagon Pete. He could hardly believe such utter innocence existed. Perhaps he did not believe it existed, for he had come from the city, and he had had shady companions before he had landed in Riverbank. Ooh, Riverbank. It's like sounds like he's in Iowa. This is like River City.
Yeah. I wonder if they're supposed to be in...
Yeah, I don't know where we haven't said where they are.
Yeah.
I mean, the newspaper was from Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
So, who knows?
But it's correspondence class. That could be anywhere.
That
You could be in
anywhere.
California.
He was a sharp-eyed, red-headed fellow with a hard fist and a scar across his face, and when Mr. Gubb had told him of Mr. Kritz and his affairs, he had seen an opportunity to shear a country lamb. Oh, no! Pie Wagon Pete's a con man!
Yeah.
Oh, no. I knew it.
Never trust a redhead.
It's true. How's it go for tonight, Philo? He asked Mr. Gubb, taking a stool next to Mr. Gubb while the night man drew a cup of coffee. Quite well, said Mr. Gubb. Everything is arranged satisfactory. I'm to be on the old houseboat by the wharf house on the levee at 9 with it. He glanced at the night man's back and lowered his voice. And Mr. Kritz will bring you there. 9, said Pie Wagon. I meet him at your room, do I? You meet him at the Riverbank Hotel at 8:45, said Mr. Gubb, like it was a real thing. I'm going over to my room now and give him the money. What money? Said Pie Wagon Pete quickly. Well, you see, said Mr. Gubb, he sort of hated to trust it out of his hands without a deposit. It's the only thing he has, so I thought I'd put up $100. He's all right. Oh, sure, said Pie Wagon. $100, eh? I mean, it's the right voice.
Yep.
He looked at Mr. Gubb, who was eating a piece of apple pie hand-to-mouth fashion, and studied him in a new light. $100, eh? He repeated thoughtfully. You give him $100 deposit now when he meets you at 9. And me at 8:45, and the train leaves for Chicago at 8:43, halfway between the houseboat and the hotel. Say, Gubby, what does this old guy look like? Mr. Gubb, albeit with a tongue unused to description, delineated Mr. Kritz as best he could, and as he proceeded, Pie Wagon Pete became interested. Pinkish and bald, top of his head like a hard-boiled egg. He ain't got a scar across his face. The dickens he has, short and plump and a regular nice old grandpa. Blue eyes? Say, did he have a coughing spell and choke red in the face? Well, sir, for a brand new detective, you've done well. Listen, Jim, Gubby's got the hard-boiled egg. What? What? We're going to find out.
Apparently, Mr. Kritz is a famous con man called the hard-boiled egg.
Yeah. And apparently, Pie Wagon Pete is a detective.
By the sounds of it, yeah.
The night man almost dropped his cup of coffee. Go away, he said. Old hard-boiled himself? That's right, and they caught him with the goods. Say, listen, Gubby. For 5 minutes, Pie Wagon Pete talked while Mr. Gubb sat with his mouth wide open. See, said Pie Wagon at last, and don't you mention me at all. Don't mention no one. Just say to the chief, and having trailed him this far, Mr. Whitaker, and arranged to have him tooked with the goods, it's up to you, see? And as soon as you say that, have him send a couple of bulls with you, and if they can do it, they'll nab old hard-boiled just as he takes your cash. And old Sleuth and Sherlock Holmes won't be in it with you when tomorrow morning's papers come out. Get it? Mr. Gubb got it. When he entered his bedroom, Mr. Kritz was waiting for him. It was slightly after 8 o'clock, perhaps 8:15. Mr. Kritz had what appeared to be a gold brick neatly wrapped in newspaper, and he looked up with his kindly blue eyes. He had been reading The Complete Con Man and had pushed his spectacles up on his forehead as Mr. Gubb entered. I done that brick up for you, he said, indicating it with his hands, so it's wouldn't glitter while you was going through the street. If word got passed around there was a gold brick in town, folks might sort of get suspicious like. Nice night for going out, ain't it? I got a letter from my wife this afternoon, he chuckled. She says she hopes I'm doing well. Sally'd have a fit if she knew what business I was going into. Well, time's to get along. I brung the money, said Mr. Gubb, drawing it from his pocket. Don't seem hardly necessary, does it? Said Mr. Critz mildly. But I suppose it's just as well. Thank you, Mr. Gubb. I'll just pile into my coat. Mr. Gubb had picked up the gold brick, and now he let it fall. Once more, the door flew open, but this time it opened for 3 stalwart policemen, whose revolvers pointed unwaveringly at Mr. Critz. The plump little man gave one glance and put up his hands. All right, boys, you got me, he said in quite another voice, and allowed them to seize his arms. He paid no attention to the police, but as Mr. Gubb, who was tearing...
So that's why his accent kept changing.
He was faking it the whole time. Ha! It's like I knew all along. All right, boys, you got me, he said in quite another voice and allowed them to seize his arms. He paid no attention to the police, but as Mr. Gubb, who was tearing the wrapper from what proved to be but a common vitrified paving brick, he looked long and hard. Say, said Mr. Critz to Mr. Gubb, I'm the goat. You stung me all right. You worked me to a finish. I thought I knew all of you from Burns down, but you're a new one to me. Who are you anyway? Mr. Gubb looked up. Me? He said with pride. Why, I'm Gubb, the foremost detective of Riverbank, Iowa. The end.
So we're in Iowa.
We're in Iowa, which makes a fuck ton of sense. I don't know why everyone had New York accents at one point, but Gubb's voice made sense.
Yeah.
He sounded like Winthrop all grown up. And once he got rid of his lisp in the Music Man.
Yeah.
I mean, Riverbank and River City are kind of probably the same place.
They very well could be, yeah.
That was delightful.
That was fun. I'm curious what else Philo.
Well, this was the first one, right?
This is the first one.
So
this is the introduction to this character, yeah.
I kind of love that he didn't do shit.
Nope.
His friend, like he was gonna do it.
That's the little snippet about the character that I read, which is what made me decide, okay, if this is the right length, we're gonna do one of these stories. Is that he is essentially a detective who desperately wants to be Sherlock Holmes.
He wants to be
or
good.
Poirot or like one of those guys, and he's got all the gumption in the world, and he sticks to it, and he works hard, but he is really bad. He is not smart. He is not observant. He is not assertive. Like he's just a sweet guy. And so he accidentally solves all these crimes and like stumbles upon the right answers.
I love it. You know, that's adorable. Well, that's great. I mean, our writer, whose name was again
Ellis Parker Butler.
Mr. Butler. That is a niche that we have not read before.
Yeah.
Like we've read a lot of very brilliant, like Poirot, Holmes, Lupin, like all these like very brilliant, and then like I think of like currently like Enola Holmes, and like all these Wednesday Addams, like they're all very good at what they do. Whereas you rarely get to see a character who is so likable and you want him to be really good, but he's just so bad at it. But I'm guessing he continues to solve cases by accident.
Yeah. Like, so this character falls into the comedy mystery genre, much more along the lines of the movie Murder Mystery.
Oh yeah. Oh, which is so good.
Which is great. Where
it's on Netflix, y'all. If you haven't watched it and you like mysteries, murder mystery, it's Jennifer Aniston.
It's Jennifer Aniston and her salad.
There it is. There's the synchronicity of this episode. Jennifer Aniston and Adam Sandler, and amazing cast actually. But yeah, go check it out. But yeah, it's like accidental solving.
Yeah, and in that one, like the people trying to solve the crime are actually quite good at solving crimes. But the point is that it feels like it is a parody of the genre that is the serialized detective mystery.
Yeah.
But is still in and of itself a good detective mystery.
Yeah.
Like, that was an interesting twist.
I didn't know what was coming.
That was an interesting twist.
I was
it
like,
was
when
cool.
is this egg thing going to happen?
Yeah.
I love that he enlisted a friend who happens to be
who happened to
sketchy
know
person himself.
Yeah.
And was like, well, shit, let's take him down. And he goes, and he knew his friend was studying to be a detective. So he goes, dude, you go close the case. And don't mention me. So Pie Pete might not be super sketchy. He might just know about this guy.
Knows people.
And he's like, I don't want to take any credit. You go get your detective thing.
If you're selling pies on the street of, well, I guess, of Riverbank,
Iowa. Riverbank, Iowa. You're probably not that sketchy. I do love that con men come to Iowa all the time. Like, thinking Harold Hill just rolls into Iowa and sells fake instruments. And
this guy is apparently like the best worst con man ever. Yeah. Because if the guy who sells pies in Riverbank, Iowa can peg you as this famous East Coast con man by rough description, maybe it's time to give up the game.
Or maybe you've been doing the same game too long.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, my aunt got taken by that over in Mason City. I should, must be that guy again.
Say what? He said he's a Nigerian prince? Yeah. All right. Come here.
Well, I liked that one. That one was fun. And I got to do lots of dialects.
Yeah.
Many dialects for one character, but it turned out he wasn't any of those dialects anyway. So I win. Give me my Oscar.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one. What did you think, listener? Did you have fun with that story? I did. I thought it was cool.
And I now know what it's like to pose as a boob.
Yeah. Let us know what you thought about that one. Email us at 5050artsproduction@gmail.com or message us on social media. Just look for Campfire Classics Podcast and you'll find us on any of those media thingies. And when you what was the other thing that I wanted to hear from them? Oh, yeah. So when you email us to tell us what you thought of this story, and you email us to let us know what TV show you would like to watch with us.
Oh, yeah.
Please include this week's secret passcode, which is Jennifer Aniston's salad.
Yeah. It's quite delicious.
That's it. That's all I got.
That's
Anything
all
from
I
you?
got. Nah.
Great. Well, then, until next week, this has been Campfire Classics, where we try to read those books that look really good on your shelf.
Booby, booby, boo. Boo, 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 booby, boo. Booby, boo, boo, boo. I just thought I'd sandwich the episode with more plagiarism of the Friends theme song.
Great. I love it. That'll work. In the immortal words of Cat Stevens, peace out, bitches.